All right, I am thrilled for each and every one of you all today because today I have a very special guest. Today, known for bringing joy and purpose to every room she enters, I have an amazing, successful entrepreneur, mentor, and host of the Big Bold Faith podcast. With over 12 years of entrepreneurial experience, she's built a thriving business through unwavering integrity and authentic leadership and preparing to launch an exciting new venture in 2025. Today, this young lady has an amazing gift for connecting with people. She shines through whatever she's doing, whether it's producing live events, mentoring fellow entrepreneurs, or sharing wisdom from behind the mic. Grounded in her Christian faith and equipped with strategic business acumen, she creates transformative experiences that bridge practical success with spiritual growth. Her unique blend of professional expertise and heartfelt compassion has made her a trusted voice for those to make a meaningful impact in both business and life. Please help me in welcoming Miss Brittany Durphey. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for the beautifully well eloquated intro. It makes it
Again,
makes
this
me feel special. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Well, I'm not sure that it does you justice because, we had a little bit of time to chat before we start recording here, and you have an amazing story. I mean, just some of the work that you're doing through your business ventures, I think that everyone's dying to hear, tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. The journey of entrepreneurship is definitely not easy. I like to keep it a buck. I'm as transparent as possible because that's my superpower, to be transparent about the ways that I've gone. And 12 years ago, my God, literally, I don't think I'm not that old. I mean, I got a little bit of gray hair, but 12 years ago seems like a really long time. And when I started entrepreneurship, it actually out of college, ASU, Arizona State University, is my alma mater. And in that last semester, I had the opportunity of doing an internship, and there was an opportunity to do event planning. And I started there, and I was like, oh, this is dope. But I'm not going back to school. This is like the senior year. We done given you all of my money, all of my things, and I don't know how this is going to work. And I had this amazing, phenomenal opportunity. I have a family friend who's close, which I guess I've known him for 20 years, and he worked at IBM. And he said, hey, I can get you an opportunity to intern at an IBM show, but you've got to, I can get you fed and I can get you a hotel room, but you got to find a way to fly. And this is when Southwest had those like $39 flights or $49 flights. So I was like, okay, I can afford that. You're out of college, you ain't got no money. I just had to make sure my fits were fitting, that I looked professional. And from there, it just blossomed into something beautiful, step by step. Of course, trusting God through the whole process of doors opening. I started there as an intern and was the information girl. And like the back of my hand, I can still tell you everything about the Mandalay Bay because that's where we started. And the most profound thing is 12 years looking back, which that was back in 2010, I still do IBM shows. And so it's crazy to think about that because I'm just like, we still doing the same thing out here. I started as the information girl, and now I'm in a different place and position, and very grateful for just all that I've encountered along the process.
Wow, that is phenomenal. So, tell us, how has your business evolved now? Like, what's your ideal client? Who do you help in the marketplace and how do they benefit from the services that you provide?
Yeah, my first business, because my second business I'm sure we'll get into a conversation about, but my first business really has me as a subject matter expert when it comes to organization and admin. So I'm a process and structure girl, so I can organize your whole life. That is a gift that God has given me, and I didn't understand it for a really long time, but able to go in and make sense out of chaos and just working to execute visions and produce stories on stage, really, as far as storytelling and putting all those pieces together. I think a lot of people think that it's easy, but when you go to a conference or you experience those things, there's so many pieces that go into place when telling a really good story. Like, think about your favorite movie, right? And thinking about the script writing, thinking about the lighting, thinking about the actors, thinking about the different visuals as far as angles and camera. Like, that is all of the components. And I'm glad God has given me the ability to look at it like that. I didn't think of it for a really long time that that was what I was doing. I was just like, we just making things happen. But yeah, I would say, as far as an ideal client goes, nobody's going to like this question, or nobody's going to like my answer or response, because for a long time I didn't have a target audience. That's changed a lot differently in my second business. The way that I approach my first business is I really go to God. And so I say, God, is this what you want me to do in this season? Is this a person, or is this the project? because I'm going in for a light assignment, and my light assignment is to make sure that whatever that looks like, right? Well, people may know about God, they may not know about God. I'm in there to bring joy, to bring laughter, to bring light in any way possible, and my organization skills as well.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. And, I love how you touched on that, your target audience, because, so oftentimes I feel like, when I'm talking to different entrepreneurs, sometimes on their journey, they haven't identified a target audience. And, I've learned through interviewing successful entrepreneurs like yourself that, there's riches in the niches. And that if you can find that group of people that you really speak to, that you really help, then you'll be that subject matter expert for them. But I love what you shared there about how you use spiritual guidance and God's guidance to help direct you to the next step. So, that kind of brings me into a question I have. You have a podcast called Big Bold Faith. Is that right?
I do. Yes.
Wow. So, kind of in leading into that, it sounds like, and, please help me understand that, the way that you build your business is through faith and leaning on God's guidance to help provide those correct clients, those correct people to work with. Is that correct?
It is. I think it's been, I don't think anything. I know now that it had to be a faith move. It's been hard, if I'm honest, to walk in faith. Just as an entrepreneur, believer or no believer, walking and believing in faith for something that you do not see is the greatest strength that I will say I've learned as an entrepreneur, along with the lessons and characters and systems and all of the business things that go behind the scenes. But really trusting the process and believing for God of every opportunity that I have. And it just hasn't always been easy, if I'm honest. It has not been easy, but I keep trusting. God keeps putting me back in alignment. I have the same fussy attitude some days. I'm like, God, it's a new year, same me, asking the same questions from back in, like, it's just, here we are. And I'm so grateful that he's gentle with that process. But yeah, it's a faith by faith process of understanding, knowing what your business is and what it won't be, and not looking at your business the way that everyone else may have a blueprint, which I think it's divine. I think many entrepreneurs get caught up in this idea that, hey, either this market is very saturated and there's not enough room for me, and or you try to replicate or copy somebody else's business idea. And though it may be similar, you might be a graphics designer, you may be an influencer, there's something different and set aside that you're supposed to speak to. We can't cover all of the billions of people in the world, right? And so you have a target, obviously, market and audience, but there are a certain amount of people that need to be underneath your business you're covering. And so that might be 100 people. Like I always tell business owners this, or people that are entrepreneurs and my mentees, that, hey, you don't need 100 clients every year. You need like maybe 10, 15, like depending on it, really good people that you can build relationships with, that you can go time after time. And when you think about those deep relationships versus the wide relationships, you create and cultivate a sustainable business that isn't going to burn you out, because you know these people. Hey, Roger and I walked or worked this year. Like, I thought of something like that would add to his business. Let me hit him up. Let me let him know. It becomes a relationship. It becomes a partnership
Mm.
versus it just being a client transaction. And I think that's what we get wrong when we think about business. Business isn't about transactions. It's about relationships. And when you get a chance to lean in to understand people, something magical happens, and you get this ability to learn about people, and you get a chance to be part of their story, and they become part of yours.
Wow, that was amazing. Yeah, if we were in a poetry room, I would just, start snapping my fingers right now. You just hit us with so many wonderful points. And, I love what you were sharing there about, working with a smaller number of clients, because it's something that I believe is really important. I've heard it said from several entrepreneurs that they're looking for more opportunities to get in front of clients or more leads. But it sounds like what you're saying, that if they could just focus on the leads that they have, focus on the clients that they have, and deepen those relationships, that they would be able to get better success. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that that's a great spot to start. And I think through that, of you building that, guess what? They're going to give you referrals and word of mouth. And that's been my whole business. I've never, and I've shared this with you before, but I've never marketed my business. I've
Mhm.
only basically focused on the assignment at hand. And so if it's one client or three clients, I go into it like, this is my God given gift and purpose. And what usually happens is they know people that know people that know people. And then you're sitting at the head of a CEO table with a voice. And I'm like, I don't know how we got, I don't know how we got here. But all I do is I work as I do everything unto the Lord. But I'm working in that setting, in that place to be the best representation. And then when people are like, hey, I know someone that you need to connect with, and it works. That's my secret sauce for the last 12 years. I do not market myself, but I go in and I work hard and I'm diligent and I provide value and I provide insight and I provide relationships, and then it just makes itself known.
Wow, this is awesome. So this isn't theory. This isn't like you're a professor that's trying to share your, strategy. This is something that has actually worked for you over the last 12 years and has helped you to continue to remain successfully unemployed. That is absolutely amazing. I think that this would add a lot of value to, the person listening to this right now. Would you mind sharing with us a story of one of those instances where you had a client and that relationship changed or deepened and you didn't have the opportunity to either acquire another client through them or you were able to deepen the business through them? Tell us one of those exciting stories.
Yeah. The first story is like a humble beginning, and I'll trying to think which one I'm definitely going to share this one, and if the other one comes to mind, then I'll share that as well. But from the very beginning, so I started in event management, which is more like the front of house thing. So if you've ever been to an event before and there's hotels and there's, you're trying to get signed up, you're trying to get your badge, I started on that end. And now I've progressed to event production, which is more the behind the scenes thing. So anything from a big sales conference, you've got Steve Jobs, which is who is no longer with us, but presenting the iPhone on stage and all of the motives and the things that go through that. But as I was transitioning to that, I started as a PA, which is a personal assistant. And in this room and space, this is how I know that it's like a God thing. So as a PA, you're like the flunky. You have to go like drive and get people's coffee order. You got to go get like paper. You got to be about your P's and like all of those things. And they flew me out from Phoenix to Texas. They don't do that. Why would I pay you to come and then pay for your hotel room as well? And so I get there knowing like the assignment. I'm grateful for the person that made the room for me. And I get into this room and there's 5 other producers. At this point, they all work for they're freelance essentially. They're entrepreneurs themselves. And I just worked diligently. I connected with them. I would check on them. I would just like have this connection like, hey, I'm about to go. And, I start remembering people's coffee order. Hey, I was at Starbucks and I just remembered that you like this. And they were like, how'd you remember my order? Well, I just put it in my phone. Like it's easy like that. But I also became very as well of like listening to the background. So I became very intuitive of the ask. So I would be hearing them have a problem. I think once the client was like, hey, I think we want to do like cinnamon balls or those like hot fireballs. And I'm listening in the background and on my computer, like it's 6 o'clock on a Friday. Where am I going to find cinnamon hot balls for whatever project that we're doing? And the moment that they finish having the conversation and it comes back to me, I say, hey, they're like, hey, are you ready? I'm like, I've already ordered it. It'll be ready at 7:05. And so just being that like intuitive and like ready for it, they saw something in me. Out of this event that I went to with these 5 producers, upon leaving, one of them was like, hey, what are you doing next week? And I was like, I ain't doing nothing. I just got into this field. Like, what you got? She's like, I want you to come with me to another event. And I know that you know nothing about these roles or something, but I'm going to pair you up with a person of mine and you're going to learn from her. So that was the first one. And every one of those other producers, then that same year, would extend an offer or some other additional. Now there's many different production agencies, but all 5 of them had different touches. And so I would have a word of mouth or a connection. And through that has just been kind of a growth of like one after another. And like that's kind of been like my God moment. Like I was in the room with the right people, 5 different people, having 5 different contacts of 50 different other production agencies and getting my name out there in connection. But I started humble beginnings, right? I started as a PA and I was also about that life. I was up early, I was up late, I was driving, I was getting paper, I was getting hot or whatever they're called. And through that, I was able to use those moments to help build me. And I'm not too proud to go back either. So yeah.
Wow, praise God. I just love how, your faith just comes out in everything that you do, and you're so bold. And I see why you named your podcast Big Bold Faith, because that it just exudes who you are. And I love that because, all through the journey of entrepreneurship, it takes a lot of faith. And, it's so amazing. I heard this gentleman share a little while ago. He said that, when he was a number two through six man in the business, meaning he wasn't the top leader, he made way more money than he did when he was a number two person, than when he was a number one person. Because when he was number one, he had to cast the vision. He had to make sure that he was managing the finances appropriately. He didn't have the same ability to be able to go out and scale his income either through sales or otherwise. He really had to be at the helm. And when you are an entrepreneur that's branching out on your own, endeavoring to become successfully unemployed, there's a lot of faith that goes into that. And it's so amazing that you share that so much, because I'm also a man of faith myself. And it's been leading me throughout this process of, leaving my W-2, going into 100% entrepreneurship. And it's just been this wonderful journey that I would not have been able to do, and that I will not be able to do without leaning on faith. So, I'm really glad that you shared that story with us, because it definitely encouraged me. I truly appreciate that. So, I would love to hear, right? Tell us, you said there's something exciting coming in 2025. What's coming in 2025, and how can we learn more about it?
2025, I'm excited for it, but I'm also nervous. I'm always gonna be transparent. I don't want to be on these podcasts and you guys like, oh my gosh, it's amazing being this. And it takes a lot of faith to get out of your own way and out of your own mountains of the things that God has called you to do. And if I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna say I'm gonna take up my faith, but I'm also gonna ask God to help me get out of the boat as well. And that's how I do life. I'm like, okay, God, you gave me a vision. It's not making sense. I'm type A. Where is step one, step two, and or at least give me some IKEA instructions, like just a picture. It don't have to have words. I don't have to understand it, but just give me something. And God hasn't released everything just yet, but the vision and the mission is really calling other entrepreneurs of faith that are in a service space into their calling. And it's called a new thing. And God has called you out of a corporation, out of an old place in a space, and He's calling you to take up dominion in a different form or fashion. And I think when we do that, we can't. I know that He hasn't called us to do it alone. And as an entrepreneur of 12 years and still in my current business, I do a lot of things alone. And God, I don't think it pleases God so much, but I'm glad that He's able to use my mess as a way to be a message to help other people. And so it's really helping mentor other entrepreneurs in this vein, but also establishing a community where we can rely on each other, right? God's giving me this ability to study through the ants and how wise that they are, right? I was in Proverbs 30 yesterday, and it's talking about that they're not mighty, but they're wise. And so I think there's a wisdom that comes when we come together in community, and it's not predicated on me. It's not predicated on Roger. Like, you're not the head person. I mean, you might be in your organization, but we need each other. And I'm able to call you, you're able to call me, and we're able to rely on each other's gifts because I don't have it all. I need to stick in my zone of genius, but you do other things well, and vice versa. And if we can rely on each other in that, I wonder how much more further that we can get in the things that we're called to do. And so, yeah, that's 2025, starting a community called A New Thing. If you are interested, it is heybrit.co/new thing. And if you go there, there's a newsletter, and it's just going to evolve to something great. I'm excited for what God has for me. I won't release everything because I know seeds need to be held, but you will be the first to know if needed. And I would definitely employ you to just be part of that community newsletter, dropping new seeds, wisdom, business tips, entrepreneur, like all of those things every week. And then obviously you can also find me, on my podcast, Big Bold Faith, on YouTube now, which is a big deal because I did not want to show my face, but God told me to come out of hiding. And so here we are.
Wow, that was just a suspense, action-packed movie thriller trailer. I cannot wait to see what else is coming behind this. This is going to be over the top amazing. I'm just so thrilled to hear about this. So, Brittany, this has been amazing. I am so excited about, your business and how things are working out for you. And I feel like I've learned a lot from this conversation. I've learned that I need to lean more in my faith. I've learned that I need to deepen my relationships with the clients that I have so that way I can increase my business with those clients. And then through increasing my business with those clients, that I can then acquire more clients. And, I think I've heard another thing through what you're saying, and I would love it if you could flush this out for me. But when you said that you don't need 250 clients, but you really need 10 to 12, are you implying that through those 10 to 12 clients, I can make either higher ticket offers or I can create more revenue through them? Can you flesh that out a little bit for me?
I'm going to say something that a lot of people won't say out loud. And I'm not going to apologize for it. There's a mindset that we think that we're successful by the amount that we bring in. And I'm not talking about being, obviously you're, the protector, you're the man. Like, and I'm not talking about God not wanting to bless you with wealth. I'm specifically saying that what happens, and I was actually thinking about this, I think when I was drifting off to sleep the other day and thinking about a podcast episode of where are the $100,000 entrepreneurs? Would it not be great to have 100,000 or 200,000 and be sustainable for the next 10 years versus this $1 million mindset? And I'm not saying that, some of us are called to be millionaires and some of us, I mean, all of us, but do I want to trade my soul to in my first ministry, which is my family, which
Mm,
is my gifts, which is my life, to be a millionaire and to give entrepreneurship is 24/7. It is
mm,
24/7 and you need to rest and put it down. And so if I'm always going at it and not living the life that what's your purpose here on earth? To make $1 million and then what? Then you're further away from God. And so many times, like people think that that hustle and grind is great. And then what ends up happening? Like you wait, I said the other day, and I was stirred up. My team was like, you were stirred up on that episode that basically you make $59 million and then you wake up and you're not in heaven tomorrow. And it's like, what did you do with your time here on earth? And so I'm not saying that. I'm saying that whatever God has told you to do in that season, as far as charging much or charging little, again, that's how I work. God, how much are we charging this client? Because I could, but what do you want from me, right? Even today, building content. I thought I was going to build 90 days of content. I didn't. God said I would be quelling the Holy Spirit by trying to come up with a plan that's self ambitious on me. So I'm
mm,
not going to say, like, hey, let me build all the way out to May by using ChatGPT. No, God, what is it that you want to talk to your people about? Okay, great. Same thing with these prices and in entrepreneurship. Okay, God, how much do you want me to charge these people at this time? It's not about being a millionaire. It's about being obedient at the end of the day.
mm,
And that trumps everything. God may want you to charge 100. You might only make 100,000. Will you be okay with it? Is it enough?
mm.
Or do you have the mindset of this world that it has to be $1 million and you're not successful? That's where the enemy creeps in. And that's my biggest thing this year of, yes, some of us are called to be millionaires now. It might not be your time now. It might be 10 years from now. But would you be content with the 100,000? Can you steward well the 100,000? Some of us can't steward the $400 we're using for groceries. I know I can't each month. I'm like, girl, you got food in the fridge. You got rice, you got beans. You better learn how to cook. And so it's just like, why do you need more? And I also think that that could be very much like a United States, like Northern American type of mindset of like, we're just in this consuming and buying. It's like, do you really need, all of these things? And some of us are called to open up other businesses and establish and help. And I believe God will release funds to you. But if I'm chasing after it in my own ambition, I don't want it.
Wow, that is amazing. I mean, I could just, go in 4 or 5 different directions from that snippet alone. And I'm telling you, I am so excited to go back and listen to this podcast because there's so many good things that you shared this there. And it just reminds me of a couple of things that I've heard recently because I'm an avid reader and I like to listen to successful people like yourself. And someone shared with me recently the fact that of all the money that you currently have in your bank account or at your disposal, you're probably only going to use about 30% of it. And the other 70% you'll never use because it's in savings or because it's just there. And the same thing with your living space. You probably are going to use about 30% of your living space, irregardless of how large the space is, whether you live in a 5,000, square foot house or whether you live in a 1,000 square foot house. Your bedroom is here, the kitchen is here, and you're going to do X, Y, and Z, right? So at any given point in time, you're not going to really be able to use much of it. So then the emphasis removes itself from, this other 70%. And then the question is, how much do you really need in order to thrive and to be successful? And there's a lot of mindset that can be pulled out of that, because, so oftentimes, we're focused on, getting a very high level top line revenue or top line square footage in our house, or in our, in our accomplishments or in our accolades. But, if we were really, sharp, and we looked at the bottom line too, like, well, how are your expenses in check? Because you can live like a millionaire if you have significantly less expenses and significantly less income, and you can still have the value of the most important things, which is, your relationship with your Heavenly Father, your relationship with your family, your relationship with your children. And there's so many, wonderful blessings that come out of that, because, if you want to build a dynasty, you want to build people, right? If you want to build an empire, build people. And, it's sometimes it can be a burden if you're only focusing on chasing money, because it's going to be difficult to do both at the same time for certain individuals. So, Brittany, I just loved how you answered that question. I have a couple of real quick rapid fire questions here. This has been a jam-packed podcast. I'm so fired up for the person that's listening to this right now. But let me ask you a question here. A couple rapid fire questions. How has failure shaped your life?
That's not a rapid fire question. Oh, therapy session. Oh, failure. Failure is hard for me as a type A. I know the Saints aren't going to cancel me for that, but for the type A in me of wanting to be perfect, which is something that I'm still like working and walking through, of understanding my value and my worth outside of my work, of knowing that failing is part of the entrepreneurship journey. That's how you learn. And I wish we could go back to being children and just fall and be okay with it, because that's how you learn to do more or less. And then, as I think as adults, we get out of that mind where it's like, no, everything has to be perfect, everything has to be right. And it's like, when did we like evolve from the age of, I don't know, 6 or 7, and have all of this life ahead of us, which I'm trying to live to be 120 years old. And so I'm like, I got a whole lot to fail at, Lord, to be able to get to the places and spaces I need to. But somehow my little bit of mind at the age of 10 or 12, it says, okay, we're perfect now. We have 10 years of experience in this life, and we can just stop and we can just be perfect all of our days. But I think that there's something glorious when we fail, we trust more, we have faith more. Have faith to fail is what the thought process that came to mind. Have the faith to know that if you fail, that God will come back and just lead you accordingly. And so failure for me has been something I challenge and I struggle with. I've taken clients that I shouldn't take, and I've had to go back and be like, we can't do business. And I've had to learn, but now I have that information. So when I go and I'm having a discovery call with the client, I have that experience to know this isn't going to work out, because it didn't work out then, because I was not looking at certain things of the organization or integrity that don't align with my values anymore. And so through each project and each thing, I learned something new, and I'm like, yep, I'm not gonna do that next time. And it just changes. And it just to have patience and grace with yourself in the failure, and believing that failure has a purpose, and like having, 1,000 ways of not doing the light bulb, right? You need all of those failures to be like, okay, this is 990, right? Yeah, you just keep going and you keep pressing on.
Wow, that is awesome. Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. I think so oftentimes people think that the opposite of success is failure, but the opposite of success is quitting. And
Mm.
failure is very important. And I love the way that you shared that right there. Let me ask you this: what's your favorite nonfiction book? Something that's added value to you, that's helped you to increase your success as being successfully unemployed?
Oh, that's a good question. Two things come to mind. I'm going to give a churchy answer and then a non-churchy answer. So my churchy answer is Dr. Miles Monroe, Understanding the Purpose of Prayer, which is like
Mhm.
phenomenal. If just read it, just buy the physical copy and annotate and highlight is all the things. That's my first. I would say then Atomic Habits would be kind of my other thing, because I'm a systems and processes girl. So anytime I can refine that niche of me, I would definitely say that that's been instrumental in just how I do business. So those would be my two kind of nonfiction books.
Wow, I'm gonna go pick up those. I am a reader myself. I actually read Atomic Habits a while ago, but I heard it through the audiobook. I need to go ahead and pick up a physical copy, because I've heard you're like the third or fourth person within the last couple of weeks that's really reminding me of that book, and I'm gonna have to go check that out. So awesome recommendations there. Let me ask you this: how would you recommend people get started if they wanted to do what you do out in the business world? Where should they get their start?
where to get your start. I love to be intentional with my responses versus programmed. And so I would say if you feel led to start, then start. And I know every and you're like, girl, that sounds so much easier than just starting. But I think the way forward is you have to go through it and you have to start imperfect. And I think that's what I'm learning with my second business. If I can be transparent and hot for a moment, my first business was very well put together. She had the website, she had the business card, she had the name tags. Y'all don't know about the name tags because they don't do that anymore. But I had the little magnetic ones. I had the resume. We were looking like a whole professional brand. And what I've learned about the second one is it doesn't have to be perfect before it started. And I think that there's knowledge to be gained with that because you're understanding your client and what you're doing. And I've heard a lot of successful stories of people not having a website yet, which let me tell you, as a business owner, you do but you or some type of landing page of some sort. So it doesn't have to be, super, but get out there. This is what I'm gonna recommend. Thank you. Go out and tell 5 people about your business, even if it's not fully formed yet, right? You might just have the LLC, you might not have the mission and the vision, whatnot. I'm gonna do it as a challenge, and I'm gonna
Mm,
challenge you to
mm.
go out and tell 5 people about your business. And the goal here is not for you to obtain them as a client, but really to get feedback, to see what they say about your business, to see how they understand it, to see what questions. Take that insight, take that feedback, take that market research per se, if we were gonna, delineate it as something, and start analyzing that. And if they become a client, great. But take that information and just get bold enough and confident enough to start talking about your business, even when your business isn't fully put together the way that you wanted to. So that would be my recommendation as someone starting off. Come up, you have a vision, you know what you kind of want to do. Okay, it's not fully fleshed out, but as boldly as I'm sitting right here saying, this is the mission that God has given me right now. Now, you ask me in 2 weeks, it might be something completely different, but that's my business and that's your business. But essentially, go out and be like, this is where we are today. This is what it's going to be, and be okay with the change. You can scale up or you can scale down, and allowing yourself that information in this season as you transition.
Wow, that was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I tell you what, I am so invigorated and energized, from our discussion here today, and I know this is going to bless so many wonderful listeners. Let me ask you this, Brittany. If someone wants to get more, if someone wants to hear more about your journey, if they want to work with you as a client, if they just want to, have a chat, if they want to, because you said that you mentor others and that you have, this bold, brand new idea that's coming out. How can people get in contact with you? Where can they find you? I'm assuming you have a website because you said that we need to have one. So where can people find you, Brittany?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, if you go to heybritt.co, that'll be just the latest and greatest. If you want to reach out to me specifically to kind of be just more interested in booking maybe a discovery call and walking this thing out, and even if I could pray for you, I would definitely, you can email me at hello@heybritt.co and we can correspond from that way. And I very much believe in prayer. So I'm that chick, I'm that girl in the squad, in the circle, that we don't do anything without prayer and with the word of God.
Wow. Amen. I love that. Wow. Brittany, this has been so encouraging. Thank you so much for coming on the Successfully Unemployed show. I know that this is going to bless many, many lives as even more than it's blessed me through our conversation. And I can't wait to go back and listen to this podcast and take notes because I found that by going back and taking notes, I get the things that I missed in the middle of the conversation. So that's why it's been such a blessing to be able to have you on the show today. And I look forward to chatting with you again in the future. Thanks so much, Brittany. This has been awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Goodbye.